after being a behavior analyst for over a decade, I made a big mistake a few years ago about shoes for Lucas. So today, I'm going to cover some key points about shoes for your child or clients with autism that all parents and professionals need to know. Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Barbera, autism mom, board-certified behavior analyst, best-selling author of The Verbal Behavior Approach, and online course creator. Each week I provide you with some of my ideas about turning autism around, so if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do that now. The other day, one of our longtime members, Anna, asked a question in our private members-only Facebook community about how to teach her son, Nick, how to keep his shoes on, which has recently become a problem, and it coincided with him getting new shoes. While Nick has made a ton of gains since Anna joined my online courses and community 2 years ago when he was 8 or 9 years old, and Nick went from speaking only a handful of words occasionally to being able to ask for and label hundreds of words, Nick remains impaired with moderate to severe autism, and new problems do creep up. For example, now he's taking off his shoes constantly, and she wants to know how to help him learn to keep his shoes on. Anna was also worried in her comment that she posted that maybe Nick's new shoes weren't comfortable, as her son can't tell her if he's in pain. How many times have we bought shoes for ourselves and returned them or never wore them again because they weren't comfortable? I shared with Anna and the group how I made a huge mistake a few years ago related to shoes I bought for Lucas. So I thought I'd share that with all of you today so that you don't make the same mistakes. When Lucas was in his late teens, he had some self-injurious behavior related to pain. This usually involved head pain, but there were times during and after his SIB that he was holding his feet and saying, "Foot hurts." I took him to a podiatrist who x-rayed his feet, which were generally fine, and the doctor thought that maybe he needed better shoes, so he recommended going to a shoe store called Foot Solutions that was, in my mind, a store for older people with bunions and other older people foot issues. But it was a great recommendation. At the specialized shoe store, they had trained staff to measure Lucas's feet and to watch him walk in his current sneakers and his new ones. Turns out, Lucas had been wearing a size 10 medium sneaker for a few years, without much support, and he actually needed a 9 extra wide sneaker with support. The sneakers that I bought were $100 or over that, but his foot pain went away completely. And now we just go into the store and buy him the same brand and the same size sneakers from the same store every 6 months or so. And he's been great with zero complaints of foot pain. Obviously, for younger children, they'll need to be measured each time. But by the time Lucas had foot pain and I made this big mistake, his feet were fully grown. So the number one thing I can tell you to do with your child or suggest to your clients' families is to get their feet measured at a specialized shoe store by professionals who sell shoes to people with feet issues. Or if they're a young child, get them measured by a specialized shoe store for children's shoes. I'd also suggest, if possible, to purchase more than one pair of shoes and give children and adults with autism a choice. After wearing the pairs indoors a few times, continue to give them choices, and you might then be able to return one of the pairs if they become uncomfortable and less preferred. First of all, teaching kids with autism to keep their shoes on, if this becomes a problem behavior, involves making sure that the shoes are comfortable, making it part of the dressing routine so that you don't only put shoes on when it's time to go out. And if keeping shoes on is still an issue like it is for Nick, I'd recommend data collection, figuring out the function, and then a plan consisting of longer intervals with shoes on and a reinforcement system that reinforces the behavior. Because any behavior we want to increase, we have to think about reinforcement. Another point that I want to make is that teaching shoe tying is probably easier to teach than you think. When Lucas was younger, I assumed he'd need Velcro shoes his entire life. But after 1.5 hours of my time teaching him over a few weeks when he was 14 or 15, Lucas successfully learned to tie his shoes. And I've outlined how to teach kids to tie their shoes in another video blog that you can check out. And finally, since Anna was worried about whether Nick's new shoes were causing him pain, there needs to be a focus on teaching kids and adults with moderate to severe autism to indicate when they're in pain. This is a complex skill. It's very hard to teach, but really important. In fact, it took me many years until I figured out how to get Lucas to tell me that he was in pain. And I've outlined the steps that I use to teach Lucas and other kids in another video blog. So in summary, avoid shoe mistakes I made. You want to make sure the shoes fit by getting your child's feet measured at a specialized shoe store, and purchase more than one pair if possible, and give choices. Teach kids to keep their shoes on if that's an issue. Will require more of data collection and analysis and a plan, including reinforcement. And finally, focusing on teaching kids with autism to tell they are in pain is extremely important. I would love it if you'd leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, share this video with others who might benefit. And for more information on my approach to turning autism around, you can attend a free online workshop at marybarbera.com/workshops. And I hope to see you right here next week.